Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's DIH Talk. My name is Santiago Uribe Diaz. I am a digital transformation advisor here at Lux Innovation. And for those of you who are new to these webinars, you have a discussion button where you can interact during the whole session. And there is also a questions button. We encourage you to use that menu to post all your questions about this topic during the webinar. And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session where the speaker will answer to all of those questions. And finally, you have a third button called interactivity, where you will find some very useful links from the University of Luxembourg that complement the topics explained during this session. So today's topic is continuing university level education for professionals. So you will learn very useful information about the different programs and options that the University of Luxembourg has for people that want to continue their education and are already professionals in the working world. Now, I would like to introduce you to the DIH services. So the DIH, the Digital Innovation Hub, our main goal is to digitalize the companies in Luxembourg, and we do it in many different ways. So a very important reminder is that all these services are 100% financed by the EU and Luxembourg, and there are no invoices or administrative procedures required. So first of all, we have the assessments. The assessments are questionnaires that you find online or that you can fill with our help in your facilities as well. And they will let you know what's your digital level in your company in many different topics. So this is a great tool to discover in which direction to orient your digital projects. Should you do AI? Should you do cybersecurity? Maybe acquire an ERP system, and so on. You can discover this with the assessments. Then in terms of cybersecurity, we work very closely with the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity. They also have cybersecurity assessments in which you can find out how well or how bad your company is protected against cybersecurity attacks. This is a very important topic because, companies are more vulnerable with the new technologies. And they also have an initiative called Room 42, which is very interesting. This is a physical room in the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity, where you can come with your team and simulate a real cyber attack with the data of your company. So this is an excellent opportunity for you to be prepared and know what to do on a real attack. Then in terms of skills and trainings, we work with the University of Luxembourg. So you can analyze the training needs of your staff and what trainings would you like to offer as well in your company. Do a match and finally produce a roadmap in which you will know what trainings you should focus next in your company. Then for technology tests, we work with the LIST, the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology. They have workshops in which they talk about technologies. They explain new technologies to you, and it's done in a very interactive way. So each participant has a laptop in their office, and you can test the things that the instructor is explaining. Apart from this, they also have the Test Before Invest program. So let's imagine you want to acquire a new technology in your company, but of course it's a big investment, so you would like to know if it's worth it or not. Then you can reach to the list, and in the Test Before Invest, they can test together with you this technology with your data and give you an analysis, so you will make a smart decision and know if it's worth it or not to invest on that technology. And finally, in terms of awareness on funding, we also have webinar sessions like the one from today, but completely oriented to the different funding opportunities that Luxembourg has for companies. And now, before introducing you to our speaker, I would like to ask your help. So we are trying to find out what is the language preferred by the participants to these DIH talks. So in the future, would you like to have English webinars like today? or would you prefer to have two sessions, one in German and one in French? If you want to vote, you would help us a lot, and it's very simple. You just need to scan the QR code that you're seeing in the screen and answer that simple question. So I will leave it for a while so you guys can vote, and then we pass to the next slide. Okay, now please join me in welcoming our speaker of today, Thomas Benz. He is a training specialist in continuing education for the University of Luxembourg Competence Center. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody.
You're welcome. The floor is yours. I'll switch to your presentation.
All right, thank you. So, again, in the introduction, Santiago already mentioned a few points that become part of the presentation today. So, just a short introduction. I'm here presenting as let's say, an outgoing member of the Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub and as a representative of the continuing university level education initiative by the University of Luxembourg. So you can expect to have kind of both worlds. The agenda for our talk today is, first of all, the context, what I just mentioned, a little bit about the learnings from our L-DIH services, which were the training roadmap support or the training catalog that you saw on previous slides, as well as the DSMA, the Digital Skills Maturity Assessment. And on the other hand, the context here is the University of Luxembourg's continuing education offer. So all of these things can be connected, and you will see how, and I'm sure we will be working together in the future as well. There's many things happening in the field of continuing education in Luxembourg. That is good because the second point is it's important to understand these initiatives and to gain what is called here skills and training intelligence. It's important if you want to upskill or if you are in need of a training initiative to understand the language. Second, you need to understand, or third here, you need to understand that trainings, they are more than just the educational offer. They also provide a certain kind of reputation. And to be clear and to be transparent, this kind of reputation, this social capital should never be left aside. And then the last point today would be becoming aware of the zone of proximal development. This is going to be a little more technical and a little more, let's say, scientific here, to give you some insights on what you actually can realistically expect if you work together with us or the L-DIH. So let's start with the university level continuing education part. The academic continuing education aligns with the 4-year strategic framework of the University of Luxembourg. It should be 2026 to 2029. And it has been elevated to one of the core specialties of the university in the coming years. The priorities here are artificial intelligence, digital transformation, finance, health, medicine, but also focusing on the inclusive provision, so on the inclusivity and to some extent on the challenge of multiculturalism in a place like Luxembourg. We have the existing offer in university continuing education, and for that I have shared a little I have shared the screen down here. Is it possible to put this as, yes, thank you so much. The university already offers 12 programs in continuing education. Currently, they are focused a lot or heavily on IT, on the health sector, as well as finance. But there's also certificates, and this one is newly launched, Understanding Autism for a Better Conclusion. for better inclusion, which might be important in the companies, in your company sectors as well. And there will be more or coming in the next few years, and I would be the point of contact for these developments there. So every university certificate has to be backed by at least one member of the permanent teaching staff. And these are points where we put ourselves apart from, let's say, other training offers here. So we don't, university level continuing education is not aiming to be another training offer where we have a large number already in Luxembourg and in the greater region. But we have certain guidelines that we must uphold, or certain standards that we must uphold. One is, it is always backed, a new certificate and current existing certificates are always backed by members of the scientific and teaching staff. And all programs are developed with the help of our competence center here from the University of Luxembourg. And they're checked and balanced by the education quality office, meaning that they have the same kind of quality standards that a bachelor's and a master's program would need to adhere to. So we are looking in the next few years to offer something more than just continuing education. We want to make it inclusive, and we want to try new formats that help people learn asynchronously, learn at times where normal classes are not happening, and that also includes underrepresented groups and non-traditional learners. And there's many ways to do that. One would be to include the digital learning, where we have a large offer as well in our competence center, and we would be ready to develop MOOCs and different formats of asynchronous learning in order to achieve that and to facilitate this inclusivity dimension. And again, another focus would be the green transition and the social dimensions, meaning at this point here, it is, for example, AI in education that is posing not just a technical challenge, but also a challenge to establish pedagogies in schools and in other classrooms of learning. We align with the research strategy. It is recognized, meaning that certificates will always have ECTS linked to them, and they will adhere to EU standards for micro-credentials. A keyword would be Europass here, if that means something to you. It is co-designed, so despite the academic ownership dimension, there will always be a stakeholder co-design, and every certificate will need to be co-designed with actors outside of the university, which could be a company, which could be an institution, which could be a club or a representation of interest. The content is balanced, meaning that there will be always ways to get in slowly and to specialize further. So the design would always be in a way that that it can be manageable and that it is adapted to the learner's needs. And they need to be financially sustainable. The University of the Competence Center, of which I'm part, aims to deliver modular courses, and for that we need to provide learner insight, and we need to tailor our pedagogical design to these kinds of insights. So we offer learning analytics for personalized pathways, where we have procedures in place to analyze and recognize prior experience from non-formal and informal learning, as well as from, let's say, acquired years, acquired experience on the job. And we would always need to match these learner profiles and the acquired experience to the requirements of the of academic offers. This is a service which we offer as well. Beyond that, we offer curricular design, meaning that it is always in practice the educational offer of the university, let's say, rarely fits out of the box to the needs of practitioners, or to the needs of companies, or to the needs of adult learners. And for that, we also facilitate adaptations. So this would also be one of our core specialties at the Competence Center, for which you can contact us. More to that, we provide individual records of learning and adaptive formative assessments, and where we adhere to the Institute of Innovative Teaching and Learning by the university, which is another instance that controls pedagogic innovation within the university. But what is more interesting here in this regard is the individual records of learning that we produced will lead us to generate an assessment that is tailored to where the participants were coming from and to the decision of where they are going for. Here in this aspect, it provides feedback to learners based on their individual zone of proximal development in accordance with their learner profile. So this terminology here, zone of proximal development, I will still talk about that later a little more. Then, as a second part in this context section here, the learnings from the Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub project in terms of competence development. This is a little overview of the EDIH service structure 1.0, of which we were part, and the 1.0 will conclude in June this year. And EDIH will enter its second project phase, where Santiago, for example, would be a point of contact. But to a large extent, the services of, let's say, the old L-DIH are still taken over, and you can still contact the project partners for many of the things listed here. I would like you to focus on the skills and training section on the upper right. The project offered awareness sessions on digital training offers, one of which would be a training catalog that was produced, and I guess that it will be ongoing, and one of which is this webinar here. We offered workshops to design content of new trainings, and this is probably a service that will also continue and for which you should contact the L-DIH should you have a need, as well as guidance for specific training program or the so-called training roadmap support, as well as the digital skills maturity assessment, the DSMA. So learnings from the digital skills maturity assessment and the training roadmap support follow next. The questions here were always what's out there and how does Manit compare? Understanding the language. Most times, on a company perspective, trainings are abundant and companies are often unsure what to train for in a continuously digitalizing environment in industry and manufacturing. And for that, we always were faced with challenges in terms of research and assessment from these companies, how to achieve their training goals and their staff's development goals with the resources that they have available, and within a time frame that keeps being productive for the company. We often experience that sector development is slowed down by lacking commitment for reskilling and upskilling. It was often demonstrated during our engagement that people were more likely to be put into new roles or replaced than the scenario where they were given a clear path of development. There's often a fear of employees asking for upskilling or for more training in a certain field because they would be deemed insufficient for the position. That's another thing we have encountered in the field. And then language is here in this case, it's the spoken language. The trainings are often not localized, and what we have experienced is companies looking at trainings in Frankfurt or in Metz or further away because they feel that the trainings existing in Luxembourg, they're either heavily English focused or they don't adhere to, let's say, national or to standards, to national ISO standards, ISO standards that are often required by companies if they want to export or produce across Europe. So those are the complexities that were involved. And solutions from our side were always given through the first step, which was gaining literacy. And in this case here, it's not about the literacy of a language, but the literacy of the training offer in Luxembourg. We produced a catalog. I don't know if that's, no, sorry. It should be in the links. If you go to the interactive, section, there's a link to the L-DIH training catalog, as well as the L-DIH digital skills maturity assessment in its old form, so you can get an idea. I will not broadcast these links here. So the first step was always gaining literacy in the sense of training literacy and training intelligence. So what is actually out there, and maybe there's a training that is offered in a language not supported by the company, but that could be translated in another language quite easily in order to meet the needs of the company. Then what do these trainings require to be taken, and what do these trainings achieve in terms of outcomes? So which credential is linked to these trainings, and which learning objectives are linked to these trainings? So all of those things are part of the literacy here, of training literacy. And then following that, we needed to ask, where do your employees stand? And from there, what would be the next zone of proximal development? And this step is called the skills intelligence. So here, with the analysis of the DSMA, we were able to better translate the company needs to training needs, because we could, as specialists, translate it into the training language required by the field. The link to the DSMA is also in the interactive section here. On the side of the University of Luxembourg, we continue, so even outside of the project now, from the Competence Center, we continue the mapping in terms of trainings, in terms of the need for a new certificate, and we can assist in getting to know the specific demand for a potential topic or offer of a certificate in Luxembourg and in the greater region. So a mapping can look at possibilities of funding for potential trainees and their employees, why and how to afford training, as well as other structural motivations of taking academic continuing education teaching offers. A mapping can also focus on the differentiation between areas where there's a need or demand for more in-depth structured learning and training, and university level continuing education will always be a more in-depth structured learning and training effort. So we can offer these services internally to academics, but also if we have received a well-argued proposal for a future collaboration in the field of university level continuing education, we can offer these services to demand from outside of the university. So the value of continuing education besides learning, at the beginning I mentioned the social capital part and the fact that not all trainings are just simply their outcomes. Their trainings and the certificate is always more than that they are learning outcomes. For that reason, I will cite Bourdieu here, who was a famous French sociologist, and who coined the terms of social, cultural capital, and economic capital in a sense of constructed capital, not in a sense of financial capital as it would be classically associated, but in the sense of social capital is the aggregate of the actual or potential resources which are linked to possession of a durable network of more or less institutionalized relationships of mutual acquaintance and recognition. In other words, to memberships in a group. The best example here, the easiest example is the ISO, norms, or norms in general. It is often extremely expensive to undergo training, to have an employee or to have somebody certified in a certain ISO norm, because they are very heavy on the network side, and they are very strongly institutionalized in the sense that they are constantly quality controlled, and their network provides them with mutual acquaintance. Hence, not everybody can just offer this kind of training. So if you think social capital, and if you think what more is there to training, then think of the requirements of the ISO norms and norms in general, and how difficult and expensive it often is to get there. A group will support its members. The group's social and educational capital will be shared with its members, especially in terms of education, because education may help advance the group's capital as a whole. In this sense here, it is true that exclusivity in training leads to higher enrollment fees, leads to better revenue and to better financial outcomes for the training provider. So you will always be aware that certain training costs more as it is offered by an exclusive group of, let's say here in this case, universities, or by an exclusive group of even international networks outside of the example that I gave earlier. So when you work with us in the continuing education department of the university, you can be sure that with the backing of the university and the higher education quality that certificates need to adhere to, these certificates will always be convertible into trademark trainings. So there's social capital or economic capital linked to it. There is another aspect, working together, co-designing or co-developing a certificate, which would be the social capital here, and which would be the social responsibility that comes from partnerships with training institutions, or in this case here with us, with the university. Companies can demonstrate commitment to the training and the development of their staff, and to the continuous training and development of their staff, as well as commit to transparency in terms of promotion procedures, for example, if they commit to co-designing a certificate with us, for example. And these would lead then to new accredited positions and recognized upskilling within the company. Furthermore, the aspect of the locality shouldn't be left out. If you work with the continuing education from the university with us, then you will always benefit from programs of student mobility and all the intercultural exchange offers the university has in place. Just some examples: the University of the Greater Region, the Language Center, as well as the Erasmus mobility schemes. So a little more on the idea of the zone of proximal development. I briefly mentioned it. I kind of dropped it earlier. when I talked about the assessment of skills and competence. And the question here is always, where do I stand and what can I realistically expect to achieve? The zone of proximal development is coined by another famous scientist, a developmental psychologist called Vygotsky. And here it was originally developed for the context of children and youth development for formal education sectors. But we found it very useful to be employed here as well when it comes to the recognition of non-formal, informal, on-the-job experience. We developed this four-step procedure here that should lead from where the learner is standing to where the learner can realistically go with a very defined amount of learning. So the idea is that we control the time investment and we control the resources on the learners. And this is very important if you look at adult learners that have a full-time job on the side. They wouldn't want to be thrown into something that requires far more of their time than maybe their colleagues would require that take the same class. Hence, the idea is very important here that you need to become aware of where you can realistically go with a set and defined time investment and a set and defined financial investment as well. At first, the first step was always looking at the vision. So in the context of the L-DIH project and the context of the skills assessment and the training roadmap, this always entailed looking at the vision of the company, of the HR department, of whoever is behind the training initiative. So we asked questions on, do you have internal learner diagnostics? For example, do you have already a procedure of validation of prior experience? And do you have a certain development goal, a technical development goal, or the adaptation of a new technology that people should be ideally trained for? And the second step then was the step where, in the context of the vision and the company restraints, we looked at learning gaps from that vision, and we took inspiration from established taxonomies of skills and competences like ESCO. And this is the step where the DSMA came in most times, the Digital Skills Maturity Assessment. We looked at and evaluated established competence profiles for the addition of elements to learner profiles that already exist in the idea of the companies. Then finally, we looked at the skill vector. And the skill vector is another addition that derives from the theoretical grounding of the zone of proximal development. The skill vector is the choice between going deeper in a skill or becoming wider and more versatile through training. So this is something that must be taken account of in order to derive an achievable learning outcome, because not every in-depth training is useful for somebody who wishes to gain some coding or Python on the side in order to complement their core activities, or for somebody who would like to learn more about prompt engineering, because AI is everywhere. So after becoming aware of the skill vector, we become intentional about complexity. And here we used taxonomies like Bloom's taxonomy in order to not overburden a person that doesn't have or doesn't need to have the scientific requirements to take a master's or a PhD class at the university and make that part of their certificate curriculum. So hence, becoming intentional about the complexity is an important last step. And all of these steps together finally lead to the zone of proximal development. We always added something on top of existing offers by the university, because we were facing this very specific context of adult learners here. So we integrated final projects after we integrated feedback mechanisms that were specifically designed for the feedback to the learners, to these adult learners outside of the classes they were taking. And we developed this academic ownership dimension here to flip classrooms, for example, because we were aware that adult learners often have the tendency to take learning differently from, let's say, younger learners or even adolescents. And with that, I'm done for today. Thank you for your attendance. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to contact us. My email is given here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Thomas, for this interesting presentation. Just a sec.
Thank you.
So we don't have any questions in the chat, but if you want to find about our next webinars or all the events that the DIH has prepared for you, feel free to scan this code. Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you as well, and see you then.